At the highest level of poker, you need to estimate which hands will be about break even if you play them. We call these borderline hands. As a group, they will earn you no profit if you just play them at whim, but they won't lose money either. There is a broad spectrum of poker hands that are close to break even. If you're an active and aggressive player, then it's likely that most of the hands you'll play will be roughly borderline. But the truth is, your opponent's traits determine which of your hands are borderline. By that, we mean that some opponents will call or fold more than others, or are more likely to surprise you with aggressive raises. So remember, what seem like borderline hands in many situations can be either profitable or costly against actual opponents with names and faces. That's why Doyle Brunson says poker is a game of people. Let's say you hold this King Jack in a limit hold'em game, and after 4 cards the board looks like this. You've made a pair of jacks and have both an iffy flush draw and an inside straight draw. The pot is medium size and it has dwindled down to just you and one late position opponent. You're first to act. Should you bet? Well, that's not an easy decision because this is a broadly borderline hand. We know that because if a professional player walked up behind you right now and saw you check, he wouldn't criticize your play. And if he saw you bet, he wouldn't criticize your play. You have an option. But sometimes this borderline bet can be clearly profitable. If you're against a very loose opponent who's likely to play medium ranking cards, there's a good chance he holds a pair of tens or has a flush draw that will lose to your flush if another spade falls. In that case, this seemingly borderline bet actually is a profitable one. On the other hand, if your opponent is tight, knowledgeable, and aggressive, you're probably taking the worst of it by betting. You should either check and call or check and fold. Just remember your opponent's traits determine which of your hands are really borderline. Doyle, you know, in Hold'em, I guess the sad stories, if you could put all the sad stories together in one collection, probably about half of them involve a pair of queens.
Yeah, I think that a pair of queens is probably the most difficult hand to play in Hold'em. You have to make a decision for all your chips too many times. And you say, well, a pair of queens is the third best hand you can have. 2 aces, 2 kings, there's only 2 starting hands that will beat it. Well, that's true. But when you play a big pot, especially in a tournament, early in a tournament, you're up against 2 aces, 2 kings, ace king, or ace queen. That's the hands that the players play. So you should really play 2 queens cautiously. If you want to see a flop, and go without raising it even. If somebody raises it, don't re-raise them, just see a flop. And they call that the West Texas way to play the queens. It's never to raise with them, you just call with them. And it does throw your opponents off also. So if you get a pair of queens, be very careful with them.
Most players stop caring as much about the quality of their decisions when they're losing a lot of money in a poker game. It has to do with Caro's threshold of misery. This is a concept I've explained in private sessions to help advanced players try to play their best game all the time. The simple truth is that once anybody loses substantially more than was envisioned as likely, that's dangerous mental territory. When you sit down at a table and lose beyond what you can recover from with even a long shot great run of cards, a phenomenally dangerous thing usually happens. You only see the big tragedy and not the smaller pieces of potential profit still in front of you. Small chunks of profit that won't erase the reality that you're probably going to lose big tonight, but will have meaning down the line. See, when you lose beyond your worst likely expectations, you cross the threshold of misery. That's the point where you maximize your capacity to feel pain. It's a knockout blow, and you tend not to feel any further losses. It all feels the same. This happens in real life too. When businesses or romances collapse, people stop caring about making quality decisions because small successes or less major everyday setbacks don't seem to matter much at the moment. This is especially dangerous to your poker bankroll. And here's a poker solution. You need to condition yourself to realize when you've crossed the threshold of misery and have maximized your capacity to feel additional pain. Of course, it's often a good idea simply to quit, but sometimes you're in a profitable game if you can just maintain focus. Here's how to do it. Erase the loss from your mind by considering that ugly game over. Count your chips and stack them so you can tell where this new game starts. Remember, poker is just one battle, and at any point you're always even. You start fresh every hand. But here we're going to stray a little from the start fresh every hand concept and just start fresh right now, seeing if we can win a little bit of money. Now your whole goal is to make good decisions from this point on and hope you're rewarded by profit. By starting fresh, you're making yourself realize that anything you win or lose from this point on really does matter. You're stepping back from the threshold of misery and playing your best game. Try that.
A lot of players can't play both short-handed and long-handed in full game. You have to be able to adjust your play.
Well, that's another facet of versatility. That's why you need to be versatile.
I know that I've known a lot of players that were really great short-handed players, but if the game filled up, they couldn't play. And on the other hand, I've known a lot of great players in full-handed games that can't play short-handed. So you need to practice at both.
And they're dramatically different.
Yes,
I mean,
completely
there's
different.
Nothing similar between the two styles. A lot of players who play shorthanded are there because that may be the only place they can win because they're just too fast with their action. Don't you think so?
Yes, that's true. And a lot of card rooms actually have rules against some players coming in and taking the last seat because...
Is that right?
That's right, because the card rooms like guys that will sit down 2, 3, 4-handed and start games. And then there are other players that won't play unless the game's full. And so those players don't get very much consideration around a card room. So you need to be able to play both ways.
And you're doing the casinos a favor, and that's good for you, too, as a poker player by starting games and letting them build.
Yeah, that is important. You got to stay on good side of management.